Okay, so something I want to go into real quick that I think is important. And first of all, please realize I understand that this video may get cut off. The signal might be cut on it. And the reason why is that we're going to be covering something that a lot of individuals do not actually want out there. This video is about those Social Security employees who very simply, very effectively stole from you, the Social Security people who pay into your FICA taxes. Now, as a result of this situation, I want you to understand something very important here. The Social Security Administration has a lot of amazing employees that work their butts off to go ahead and make your checks happen. Tech problems, overpayment problems, whatever. There's tons and tons of stuff that can potentially go wrong, and they work their butts off to make it happen. However, after basically reading a lot of these complaints in Pacer system that you do not have access to, because they are sealed. You're not allowed to see them. I can see them as an attorney. I can tell you that there is a repetitive, continuous thing that keeps happening with these individuals. And I've read cases that aren't even released by OIG. And what happens is these Social Security employees will basically find a way to start getting a check that's not theirs, then multiple checks that aren't theirs, whether it's a percentage or the entire thing. And as they start to build this up, they usually get, 2, 3 checks. And then when they get to that fourth check that's coming into them, they start to invest into properties and owning like a second home. Then they start building a side business, and then they start buying more homes and so on and so forth off of the additional income that they use to basically get a mortgage going. So the bottom line that I just want to make really clear with this situation is that I'm going to share with you, because it is what I can share, essentially what OIG has released. We're going to go through the Social Security Administration employees who did in fact steal from you, the actual people who pay for Social Security trust funds, benefits, etc. So as I go through this, please just remember, this is the information I'm allowed to share with you. Other information I am not allowed to share with you. It is what it is. Let's get into it real quick. Former Social Security employee of West Sacramento sentenced to 4 years in prison for defrauding the Social Security Administration. Eric Willis, 46, sentenced today to 4 years in prison for conspiracy to defraud the U.S. Bottom line is this: according to court documents, Willis and co-defendants Darren Demetri Ross, 36 of Charlotte, North Carolina, and Joshua Bilal George, 39 of San Diego, conspired to steal public money from the Social Security Administration. Willis was somebody who worked actually inside the Social Security Administration. So Willis worked as an SSA operations supervisor in Sacramento and Lodi from 2015 until his departure in January of 2018. During this time frame, Willis used his authority as an SSA employee to access confidential Social Security records of numerous Social Security beneficiaries. These records contained personally identifiable information. Bottom line is, socials, dates of birth, stuff like that. What he did was he used that information, let's go into it real quick, to seek out beneficiaries to basically steal, direct deposit information. And so what would happen is he would set up people outside of the SSA to call in with their personal information and then switch over their payment to a different bank account, and then basically have those payments continue, and then he would be part of getting paid for giving them that information. So, the whole bottom line here is that they identified about over 200 beneficiaries nationwide who were targeted by these crimes, and it suffered at least $696,912 in fraud losses caused by defendants' offenses. The defendants spent the proceeds of their crimes on, among other things, trips to Las Vegas and luxury items, including Rolex watches. During sentencing, the court ordered Willis to pay full restitution to the SSA. Mr. Willis, quote, abused his position with the SSA for his personal gain, setting up an elaborate scheme with co-conspirators that defrauded those who needed it the most. Over $690,000 in Social Security benefits. This sentence holds him accountable for his egregious criminal actions. So this is a person who set up the SSA to go ahead and basically allow the information to be released to criminals. The criminals then called in with private information, switched the accounts over, and were able to steal the money of those recipients. Next one. All right, here we go. This one's a Social Security Administration employee accused of fraud and money laundering. Denver, U.S. Attorney's Office for District of Colorado announced Justin Skiff, age 36 of Castle Pines, appeared in U.S. District Court to face one count of each of wire fraud, Social Security fraud, and money laundering. Basically, case details August 2019 and continued through September 2021 is alleged Skiff used his position as a claims specialist with the Social Security Administration to fraudulently obtain money from the SSA. Skiff is alleged to have filed fictitious claims for benefits using false identities and the identity of an actual individual to collect proceeds from these claims. According to the court documents, Skiff's actions ultimately led to the theft of approximately $310,000 from the SSA. Skiff made his initial appearance before the magistrate judge, Kristen L. Mix. Let's get through the basics here. Okay, so bottom line is, if convicted, he will forfeit all properties derived from the proceeds that he purchased. Bottom line is the case was investigated by the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General. So you're starting to see a continuous thing where people get hired, they get access to your information, then they use it to basically steal money. That's the main theme that you're going to see with a lot of these. Let's get to the next one, okay? Next one right over here. Hold on. Okay. This one's Scranton. Former Social Security employee pleads guilty to pandemic fraud scheme. So this one is Takia Gordon Austin, age 47, formerly of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Pled guilty. The Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program basically got ripped off by this person. According to the U.S. Attorney Gerald M. Karam, Austin pled guilty to 1 count wire fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft from in or about May 2020 to in or about May 2021. Austin, a claims specialist, you're going to hear that a lot, a claims specialist with the Social Security Administration, filed a PUA claims for ineligible recipients in exchange for payments from the individuals. Additionally, Austin filed claims after accessing SSA databases to obtain the personal identification information from unsuspecting individuals, and then diverted the unemployment funds to addresses she controlled in order to use the funds for her own personal expenses. Through the scheme, Austin defrauded the government of over $288,000. Bottom line is this, investigated by the SSA, OIG. Okay. All right. Bottom line is this. Let's keep rolling. Okay. Next one over here. Okay, Atlanta, Georgia. Latanja Goodrum, Social Security employee, pleads guilty to stealing government benefits. The reason this video is important, if you ask my opinion, is that at the end of the day, what's happening is the Social Security Administration has had a lot of leaks, a lot of problems with employees that are hired to basically protect you. And unfortunately, they don't do that. They use your information to steal from you. And the theft of some Social Security benefits is the theft of everybody because it is a hive mind situation. You all pay your FICA taxes. They all go into the trust funds, things like that. So if you steal from one person, you're actually stealing from everybody's future potential because, as you know, the trust funds are going to run dry, which is a massive problem. All right. Latanja Goodrum, former Social Security employee who used her position to steal benefits from disabled supplemental security and beneficiaries, has pled guilty to federal charges of theft of government fraud. All right, so here's basic thing. They do some cute quotes about how horrible it is. According to the U.S. Attorney Buchanan, the charges and other information presented in the court from approximately June through August 2022, Goodrum, a claims specialist at the Social Security Administration's field office in Decatur, Georgia, illegally accessed the records of 6 SSI beneficiaries. Goodrum then used the personal identification information of these individuals to divert one-time lump sum payments they were due to her own PayPal account. Once the funds were deposited into her PayPal account, Goodrum transferred the money to her personal bank account. To conceal her scheme, Goodrum, once the deposits arrived in her PayPal account, re-accessed the beneficiary's Social Security records to restore their true direct deposit banking information. Goodrum stole more than $15,000 in this way. A supervisor eventually detected the fraud and contacted the Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General, which launched an investigation. Goodrum admitted her crime when confronted by law enforcement and has since been terminated from her position. Sentencing for Goodrum, 55, of Stone Mountain, Georgia, is scheduled. That was in January 22nd of 2024 at 10 a.m. before U.S. District Judge Stephen D. Grimberg. Next one. Remember, I want you to ask yourself, okay, how much do you trust the government? Because, you know, with all this stuff going on, the Biden to Trump, scenario where things are switched over, how much do you trust the government? Because ultimately, we're putting your personal information not into, some robot's hands, it's into a person's hands who, might be looking for more money. And the more money ticket, they're going to take it to go ahead and get more. And to be fair, a lot of Americans are in a situation where they feel the need to have the greed. They feel the need to try and get more money because, just to be very accurate with this situation, they're not doing well. I mean, how many Americans do you know do not have credit card debt? I mean, pretty much everybody I know has credit card debt. Everybody. They don't have a savings anymore. That was wiped out during the last 4 years. So it's one of those situations where the greed used to not make sense. Now it's making more and more sense because of how these government officials have led the country down this path. Social Security employee admits creating fake children's profiles to steal government money, October 3rd, 2023. So in Brownsville, Texas, 38-year-old Harlingen resident, former claims specialist with the Social Security Administration, has pled guilty to theft of government property, announces U.S. Attorney Almdar S. Hamdani. Lee Marvin Nichols admitted to creating fictitious profiles for 2 children that did not exist. He linked the profiles to a recently deceased man and disabled woman living in Mexico in an attempt to create a survivor benefits application. Nichols ensured that the debit cards for the children's benefits were sent to the address of someone with whom he was associated. He would then use the debit cards to make regular withdrawals at ATMs. When making those withdrawals, he attempted to disguise himself, hats, glasses, all kinds of stuff, other clothing. In addition, the IRS issued economic stimulus payments of $1,400 to each fictitious child, which he got. Okay, as part of his plea, Nichols took responsibility for over $75,000 in losses to the federal government. He also agreed to pay $82,516 in restitution to the SSA and $2,800 in restitution to the IRS. Okay, next one. Next one is right here. Hold on. Former SSA employee facing federal charges for fraudulent telework, emergency child care, and medical leave schemes. Indianapolis, Christopher Markham, 40 of Westfield, Indiana, has been charged with 1 count of wire fraud after allegedly defrauding the Social Security Administration. According to court documents, Markham was employed by the SSA and assigned to an office based in Anderson, Indiana. Between February 13, 2019 and June 17, 2022, Markham allegedly engaged in a scheme by which he made it appear as though he was teleworking full-time for Social Security Administration during workdays, when in reality, he was earning income working as a home inspector for his personal business, Markham Inspection Services. Markham was paid his full federal salary and benefits while concealing the fact that he was working for his personal business and not for the SSA. Markham routinely performed home inspections for his personal business during the work week while purporting to telework on official SSA time. He concealed the fact that he was not performing SSA work during official work hours by having his wife and his mother access the SSA computer system and send emails to supervisors to make it appear as though he was online and working. So bottom line is, he was supposed to be working. He was working in a separate company that he owned, and they got him. Just makes you wonder, how long did that go on? And, what things do they have in place to catch people who aren't working that hard from home? Next one, Social Security Administration employee charged with attempting to induce a Social Security beneficiary for prostitution. Boston, a Social Security Administration employee was arrested today for attempting to persuade a Social Security beneficiary to cross state lines to engage in prostitution. Dang Soon Kim, 35 of Auburn, Mass, was charged with 1 count of attempting to induce a person to travel in interstate commerce to engage in prostitution. According to the criminal complaint, in March 2024, Kim handled an in-person visit at the Gardner SSA field office from an individual seeking Social Security benefits after losing her job. After redirecting the individual to another SSA field office near her residence in another state, Kim allegedly called the individual using the phone number he obtained from SSA's computer system. Kim allegedly indicated that he understood she was in a difficult situation and stated that maybe they could work something out that would benefit them both. During a call monitored by law enforcement later that month, Kim allegedly again stated that they could help each other out and proposed giving the individual money in exchange for sex. In several subsequent text messages, Kim allegedly suggested that the individual travel to Massachusetts to meet him, offering to pay $100 to have sex in a car at a hotel parking lot. When Kim traveled to the hotel parking lot to execute his plan in October 2024, he was confronted by law enforcement. I got to be honest, guys. Like, if you're going to be an SSA employee and you are going to basically find a claimant and you're going to offer them $100 to have sex in a hotel parking lot, I mean, I got to be honest with you. Like, you know what I mean? This man made zero attempt to make a consensual situation out of this. And $100, like, what do you expect? I mean, like, what did you expect her to do? Of course she's going to report you. Like, what did you expect? Come on, man. I mean, what are you doing here? Dude, like, let the lady have some class in this situation. $100, my goodness. Not that I really know like what it would go for, but I guess my point with this whole situation is like, I don't know. Like, I just think it's ridiculous. You know what I mean? To put your life and your career on the line for $100 and a good time, I don't know. I just feel like that's ridiculous. I mean, I get it. People do stupid things for less. I get it. But at the same time, like, I don't know. It just seems wrong. You know what I mean? Like, he just should have been more. Should have been more. Should have never happened. Should have never happened. Let's just make that clear. Let's just upfront that, okay? But still, it's, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? So, former Social Security. Let's see what we got here. No. Is this a new one? Hold on. Let me see. Yep, we already did this one. Next one. Here we go. Newark, New Jersey. Former Social Security Administration employee admits to role in transnational grandparent scam operated from Dominican Republic. This is a good one. Here we go. District of New Jersey. Newark, New Jersey. A New York man who previously worked as a claims specialist within the U.S. Social Security Administration admitted yesterday to acting as a courier for a Dominican Republic-based grandparent scam that targeted elderly Americans. Victor Anthony Valdez, 39, of the Bronx, New York, pled guilty before U.S. District Judge Claire C. Ketchy in New York federal court to an indictment charging him with wire fraud conspiracy. According to the documents filed in this case and statements made in court, the scam operated from call centers in the Dominican Republic, making phone calls to elderly American victims purporting to be victim's grandchild. An attorney representing the grandchild in criminal proceedings court. Personnel and other persons associated with the legal system. Conspirators told the victims that their grandchildren have been arrested and needed cash for bail or other expenses. Other victims were convinced through lies and falsehoods. Co-conspirators instructed the victims to provide cash to couriers, including Valdez, who went to victims' homes to pick up the money. While acting as a courier for the scam between August 2020 and August 2021, took him a whole year, Valdez is alleged to have retrieved or attempted to retrieve tens of thousands of dollars from defrauded victims and their homes in New York and New Jersey. That was an SSA employee. That was an SSA employee. Let's take a look at this one. Hold on. Let's see. We got here. Not this one. Let's do another one. Hold on. All right. Here's another one. Let me see if we've already done this one. No, we already did this one. This is just an update. This is where the person from Brownsville, Texas, basically had his jail sentence put in place. All right, here we go. Here's another one. Former IRS employee pleads guilty to tax fraud and Social Security fraud. Boston. Former Internal Revenue Service employee pled guilty today in federal court in Boston, filing false tax returns in order to fraudulently obtain tax refunds and stealing Social Security benefits. Kathleen Mannion, 58, of Lawrence, pled guilty to 4 counts of aiding and assisting in the preparation of filing false tax returns and 1 count of theft of government money. U.S. District Court Judge Nathaniel M. Gorton scheduled sentencing for September 3rd, 2025. Mannion was charged in March 2025. From 1998 to 2009, Mannion worked as an IRS contact representative in Andover, Mass. Between approximately July 2020 through April 2023. Mannion prepared and filed income tax returns for other individuals with the IRS. Even though Mannion prepared these returns on behalf of other individuals, she did not list herself as the tax return preparer. Instead, Mannion prepared the returns to appear as if the taxpayers prepared the returns on their own. Further, Mannion listed ineligible dependents on tax returns, resulting in higher refund amounts for which the taxpayer did not qualify, all without the knowledge of the taxpayers. Mannion also filed forms with the IRS directing that a portion of the fraudulently obtained tax refunds be deposited into her personal bank accounts, which she then used for her own personal benefit. Separately, between April and October 2020, Mannion applied for Social Security retirement, spouse, and widow benefits with Social Security Administration via telephone for other individuals. Unbeknownst to these beneficiaries, Mannion directed SSA to deposit the Social Security benefits in her personal bank accounts, which she also used for personal benefit. The charge of aiding and assisting the preparation of filing false tax returns provides for a sentence of up to 3 years in prison, 1 year of supervised release, and a fine of $250,000. The charge of theft of government money provides for 10 years, $250,000. So bottom line is, I mean, it's bad, but it's I don't know. I feel like it should be worse. It should be worse. Next one, Social Security employee pleads guilty to multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Houston, former Social Security employee has admitted to conspiracy and aggravated identity theft, announced U.S. Attorney Nicholas J. Ganji. David Lamb, 45, Pearland, was an operations supervisor and claims specialist for the Social Security Administration office in Houston. As part of his plea, Lamb admitted to stealing the personally identifiable information of recently deceased men, then using that personally identifiable information to facilitate fraudulent benefit applications. Lamb admitted to working with various co-conspirators, typically women with children, to file fraudulent survivor benefit applications, listing the deceased men as the children's fathers or stepfathers. If true, this would have entitled the women to receive benefits while raising their children as widows. However, the women had no connection to the men listed on the application, and deceased men did not father the children. To facilitate his scheme, Lamb would utilize the deceased men's names, dates of birth, and death, and social security numbers. He would also instruct the co-conspirators to split the stolen funds with him. The women would transfer funds via applications like Zelle, Cash App, or Chime. Lamb agreed to take responsibility for causing $3,346,280 in loss to the SSA and has agreed to pay that amount in restitution. U.S. District Judge Sim Lake will impose sentencing September 12th. At that time, Lamb faces up to 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy to defraud the United States on the conspiracy charge and $250,000 maximum fine. This claim has been sealed. I reached out to OIG to see if they would go ahead and allow more information to be released pertaining to it, if they could work with the district courts and things like that to go ahead and open portions of it going forward. They haven't responded. They probably won't respond. OIG can be a very, very big dead letter box. But the bottom line is I reached out. I was like, people need to know, because this case has a lot of the key factors that people never really talk about. Related to what happens with this fraud down the line, how he actually pulled it off, stuff like that. And I feel like the American people should know what's been now sealed, because it would help them understand why the SSA is having such a problem. And also, to be fair, why the SSA needs to better control what their employees have access to. Next one. 4 defendants, including 2 former U.S. Postal Service employees, charged in connection with a scheme to steal $80 million in U.S. Treasury checks. We went through this one a couple of videos ago. Basically, there was Corey Scott, 25, Ardmore, PA, Alexander Telewoda, 25, Clifton Heights, PA, arrested for and charged by superseding indictment with conspiracy to steal government funds, theft of government funds, and mail theft arising from multi-million-dollar scheme to steal U.S. Treasury checks. I'll just give you the basic detail. There were 2 kids worked for the USPS, United States Postal Service. 2 kids kept stealing these treasury notes. They got them out, and they got them to other people who basically sell it to other people. They get a cutback from the sales. It ended up becoming basically, I think they had the full number in here. Hold on. Treasury. Okay, so the face value of the checks was $80 million, but they were only able to do essentially around $11 million to go ahead and do whatchamacallit. Essentially $11 million of worth of these stolen treasury notes actually occurred. So, but the whole bottom line, what you should pick up from this is that at the end of the day, the Social Security Administration, right now, one political group is pushing that there's no fraud or extremely little fraud or fraud doesn't exist. And, they're pushing various narrative versions of that. And the reason I want you to understand this video from a legal standpoint is that the Social Security Administration, just like any other organization, any other private company, any other whatever, they got the same problem. And now we think internally in our brains that the Social Security Administration would not have these problems, because when the government does stuff, they're supposed to do it as perfectly as possible. And that's why it costs so much for them to do it. But that's not how it works. The government tends to be 6 times less efficient, or at least that's what the statistic was when I was earning my master's in business. They tend to be 6 times less efficient than the private industry doing the same jobs. Our expectation is that these individuals are doing it exactly by the law, exactly by the book, but they're not. They have the exact same problems, the exact same fraud issues, the exact same employees stealing things and using things and abusing things, the exact same, all that stuff. So the point that I'm getting at with this situation is that if they are trying to tell you that the Social Security Administration does not have fraud, or that Elon was not able to find anything, or very, very little, or this or that, you did not pay for the government to take place this year to get trillions of dollars worth of fraud out of the United States government as it's audited. Okay, a federal government audit, we would love to find $5 trillion, $10 trillion worth of fraud. We would love to see that. That's also somewhat unrealistic, but I would have loved to see that. What you're paying for is an audit to then make the government run properly, because the federal government has been audited in a very long time. Now, with that said, it's scary to audit the federal government because government does not operate like private institutions. Private institutions can't break a lot of laws, but the federal government, the United States, the country, they're allowed to start wars. They're allowed to legally commit crimes that if we did them, we would be put away, right? They're allowed to, create weaponry that we can't touch. They're allowed to, do things in legal ways that we're not allowed to do. Just think about it. If, for example, a president were ever to go through a tough situation and there was a crowd of people, there's all these laws that allow them to basically do whatever they need to do. Your constitutional rights take a back seat for them to get the president to a safe location. So from that perspective, I hope you kind of understand. The reason I want you to see this and understand it is that, one side, the, Republican side is saying there's all this fraud. Yeah, there's fraud. There's more than I thought there was going to be. And then the other side, the Democrats are saying there's not much fraud at all. Hardly any fraud at all. And I guess what upsets me about that, we got to find a way. We should not have had to have a screaming Elon and a very pointy Trump just to be able to audit the federal government. You know what I mean? Like, does anybody? I've seen the pork in the big beautiful bill and the pork and other stuff as well. It's disgusting. I mean, Trump should be ashamed of it. But the bottom line is, like, why do we keep getting back to this spot where they're blowing our money on stupid shit instead of making sure the thing that we rely on stays alive? A lot of you guys don't realize this. They have just started producing the articles that show that in 8 years, instead of 9 years or 10 years, the Social Security trust funds are likely, for the retirement trust fund, likely to run low, to run out. So the point is, they were sitting pretty with this idea of, it could have been 11 or 12 years, then it was 10 years, then it was 9 years. Now they're producing documentation, which of course the Social Security Fairness Act really sped it up, where it's at the 8-year mark, right? We're also getting closer to it every day that we live, right? I don't know if you guys realize, but like, just to clarify, if the Social Security Administration has a situation where they have the trust funds run out and you only get, let's say, 80%, of the check that you're supposed, it's actually technically less. It should be somewhere around 78, 77, 78%. If you got essentially if you got 8 years from now, the same worth of the check that you were getting today, whatever your life is, you would have a 22% around there reduction in the worth of your standard of living. And many of you don't have a standard of living. You're living below the standard and having to use like specialty coupons, Section 8 housing, go to the homeless facilities to get extra clothes and extra food. A lot of you don't have that wiggle room. And yet it looks like the federal government has a tendency to piss funds outside of our borders. And it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. And here's one of the things that I had somebody argue with me over the weekend about this, and they were talking about Juneteenth, and they were talking about, which is tomorrow, and they were talking about, how everything was and how the Republicans and the Democrats switched and yada, yada, yada. And then I said something which infuriated the person, but it was a fair statement. Back then, the Democrats and the Republicans were hardcore Republicans. Right. Every Democrat, independent, and Republican that's in office today is not on the same scale that they were when Juneteenth actually occurred. So, just keeping that in mind, they're like, oh, the Democrats are really this, or oh, the Republicans are really this. They weren't back then anything like what we have today. Trump is middle. Okay, he's middle. That's why those other Republicans keep trying to destroy him, because they're not happy with who he is. The Democrats, it doesn't matter what Trump does. They're going to hate it because they've learned that if they want to get people frothed up, they need to make him seem like he betrayed the country with every step he made. If everybody got $10,000, they would talk about how he's about to ruin the economy. If he was going to go ahead and give free health care for all, they would talk about how it took him too long to do it and it's taken him too long in his second presidency and how dare he. It's this emotional playground of kicking the soccer ball back and forth that has really got me pissed off with politicians. And I will say this, you guys are thinking, wow, this sucks. Wow. Let me tell you something that's going to make your brain kind of, go into a tizzy real quick. If we are such a wealthy nation, if we are with all this capacity to make things better for Americans, right? If we could outdo the nations by far in Europe, right? If we could outdo Sweden, if we could outdo, whatever, all these other countries that give all these free things away, they're not really free. I mean, they're paid for through taxes, but if we could outdo them all, we had the money to do it. Clinton era, we had a surplus. We had the money to do it. And we lost the opportunity to make it happen. We'll never go back to being in that position again. When World War II ended, we were financially doing real good. None of our cities were destroyed. We were ramped up for production. We were putting more and more women into the workforce. We were doing great. We will never financially, we will never politically, we will never, from a war machine control over all other continents level, we will never be in that position again. We're never going to see something like Social Security benefits, where they give us SSDI in the 50s, SSI in the 70s, 1935, we were looking at retirement to begin with. We will never see programs that help the American people at that level put in ever again, because we can't afford it, because we didn't invest in America all those years when we coulda, shoulda, woulda. Instead, we played games trying to establish military bases all over the place, which costs us way too much money, and the amount of raw resources and raw materials we get out of it ain't worth it. It's the whole Ukraine thing. It's the only reason we're fuddling around with that. The whole story about, well, then they'll go to this country. Do we care? Is that our problem? Is that our fault? Oh, well, we want to da-da-da-da. No, that's because there's raw materials that we want in Ukraine. Okay? Same thing with Iran. So the point I'm getting at here, just to be kind of face forward with you in this entire situation, we will never be able to go back to a program of Social Security benefits that essentially makes you have a better life at some point. This will funnel a lot of Americans in the future to apply for military jobs, police jobs, sheriff's jobs, teachers' jobs, all the utility function jobs in America, because they're going to want some version of a pension, because they are going to see a lot of people who are disabled and retired losing everything they worked their life to be able to afford. And if you don't think I'm right, about that, think about it. What happens when 22% of a monthly check disappears for 50% of Americans who rely on that check to be able to realistically survive? Think about it. All right, let's do some quick math. Let's have some fun with math, all right? So what is the average retirement check today? Okay, let's do some basic math. Let's have some fun here. Okay, May 2025, it was $2,002.39. All right, so let's just say it's $2,000. So what is 22% of $2,000. All right, so that's $440. Okay, so we take 2,000 minus $440 is $1,560. Okay, so if we took $440 away from you today, each month, okay, and you only got $1,560, and some of you get less than that already, which I don't know how you survive. I really don't. I mean, I see how ridiculous these one bedroom, trailers are. These trailer parks. I mean, they're $1,000 now a month. So let's say you're getting that $1,560, right? You're getting $1,560 in basically 2033, 2032, around that area. There's no way you'll be able to survive. There's no way. You will have to sell everything you own and go back to work. As a disabled person, you'll be stuck. Now, disabled are even worse off. Hold on, let's look at the disabled real quick. What is the average disability check SSDI today? Average check is $1,538. Okay, so let's just say $1,500. Okay, what is 22% of $1,500? $330. Okay. So imagine, although it would be the future and you'd be getting essentially that amount, but imagine in the future you had a higher amount and they took a little bit more than $330 out of your check. Okay. You wouldn't be able to survive. You wouldn't physically be able to survive as a result. So here's what's going to happen. Long-term disability insurance programs where they pay you for the rest of your life, they're going to try and get rid of those, but some companies are still going to offer them. You're going to see a lot of people getting real smart about those. Another one is where they're going to work for anybody that has pensions. Mega companies, right? Mega companies, police, sheriffs, military, although military's pension system went to shit. Their whole 20-year thing went to, that's off the table. So now, and that's what you get, the military. The military is just a bunch of young men. They get out after their first thing, and then very, very old men who know their pension's getting set up. The trick, just so you guys know, if you want to ride the pension, parade, is that you work for 3 different companies over that span and get your 3 pensions, and then you go ahead and opt into your retirement benefits as well. And that way you get 4 pensions. Basically, you would make, 2 to 3 times what I make by just doing that. I mean, I don't know if you guys realize, but that's like, if I were smart, I would have invested into rental homes and worked for, company 1 that gave me a pension, company 2 that gave me a pension, company 3 that gave me a pension, company 4 that gave me a pension, federal government, state government, county government, specialty, whatever. Okay. That's what I would have done. You know why? Because when I'd retire, I'd have so much money coming my way. It would be absolutely just to sit there. The money is filling up the coffers. All right. So with that said, that's realistically what people are going to be looking into in the future, because the government's going to make the economy so crap that people are going to be fighting to get government jobs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable world. Unbelievable. It used to be the other way. So with that said, I am now going to go ahead and take about 10 minutes to rest, and then I'm going to go live and answer questions for free. Attorney Walter Hnot, you guys know how that works. So I get you a 5-minute free consultations. No story mode. Have your legal question ready. Use your fake name for the video, for the actual phone call. Don't stack your questions, and be ready when you get on the phone. Please remember to like and subscribe. We don't have enough likes so far. Hit that like button. Also subscribe. Head over to Google. Type in Disability Resolution Law Firm or Disability Resolution Florida. Throw some stars up there if you like. It's up to you. Also, I go live Mondays and Thursdays usually to answer questions. And if you need a full 1-hour consultation, there's a mini contract below for that. I will catch you all a little bit later. Please be nice to each other and give me about 10, 15 minutes, and we'll be rocking and rolling and doing that next video. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.